Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much. It's absolutely wonderful to be here today. What I want to do today is I want to talk to you about swimming. Swimming and environmental campaigning, they have an awful lot in common. And so I'm going to talk to you about swimming in some of the most fragile places on this earth. This is a photograph of me swimming down a river in Antarctica. What I want to do today, though, is speak about swimming in a place much closer. I want to speak to you about swimming to France, so swimming across the English Channel. Now, just to explain, I didn't swim to this conference today. I took the train, but it's an amazing swim to swim from England to France. About 1,700 people have done this swim. It remains one of the most challenging swims. And of those people who make it, sadly, about 40% of people fail on their swim to France. And generally, they fail in one of two places. Either at the beginning, at the very beginning, you'll see here that a swim from England to France is never, ever a straight line. What happens is that as you get into the water, that current just drags you up towards Holland. And after about 6 hours, when the tide turns, it'll then start dragging you along the French coastline down into the Atlantic Ocean. But people fail in two places. The first place they fail is right at the beginning. So right as you leave the English Channel, within the first 2 hours. And I always ask myself, why do people give up right at the beginning? Well, the reason is simple. What happens is that the water comes and hits up against the cliffs of Dover and then reverberates back. And so for the first 1 or 2 hours, the water is very, very choppy. And so for the first 2 hours, all you're thinking about is breathing. And often you find waves coming over you. And so you take a swimming stroke, and instead of there being air, actually you're swallowing water. If, however, you are able to get through this, then you should be okay. But so many people swim for 2 hours. They're swallowing a lot of water. And then they ask themselves a very simple question, and that is, have I got it inside myself to do this for another 12 or 15 hours? And often they don't. And so they give up and they get out right there. Now, if you're able to get through that, then what happens is often the sea flattens out. And now you've got to start getting into some type of momentum. And so you're swimming next to your boat, and you go from 2 hours to 3 hours to 4 hours to 5 hours to 6 hours. And you've got to make sure, when you're doing this swim, that you don't go too fast, because you've got to have energy at the end, but you mustn't go too slowly, because if you go too slowly, you're going to get cold, and you'll soon be out the water. And next to you is your yacht, your support boat, and on there is your captain. And that is the person who is guiding you to France. You've got ferries coming, you've got oil tankers and container ships. Your pilot has got to get you through those ships and get you as quickly as possible to France. And also on the boat next to you, you've got your coach, and your coach is encouraging you and feeding you every half an hour. Also, what I have on the boat normally is I have somebody who goes all the way to the top of the mast of the yacht. And the reason for that is because that person is on the lookout for something which can end your swim like that, can end your swim instantaneously, and that are these animals. Now, jellyfish are the most unforgiving animals. because they always get you in specific places. Even though you know they're in the water, when they hit you straight in the face, it's such a deep shock. Also, if you're very, very unlucky, you take a swimming stroke, and now you have the jellyfish around your arm, and you may have it in your armpit, and so every single stroke that you're taking, you're rubbing that poison deeper and deeper into you. And if you're very unlucky, you accidentally scoop the jellyfish between your legs, which is obviously a high consequence environment. Anyway, if you're able to get through there, you then carry on swimming, you're over the halfway mark, now you're into French waters. 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, and now you are in the most dangerous part of the swim. And the reason for that is because of the coastline, the French coastline. At the bottom of the picture, you'll see a cape. It's called Cap Grenade. And on Cap Grenade, there's a lighthouse. And so you put your head up, and for about 2 hours, you can see France. France is right there. And so you swim. But often at that moment, you are exhausted, you're cold, and what's more, you've been stung by a lot of jellyfish. You have to make sure that in those final few hours, you have the strength to get through the current, because often there's a current which goes around Cap Grenade, and unless you've got the strength to push through and to punch through that current, you won't make it. The tragedy is, I have seen so many people give up, and they give up literally 200-300 meters away from France. They have swum for 15 hours, and then 200-300 meters of France, they give up. They just didn't have enough energy and determination to get them onto the French beach. However, if you do have what it takes to get through that current, and then you walk up that French beach, there really is, it is such a unique experience. And I've seen this so many times. Swimmers walk up the beach, and you would think that they were absolutely ecstatic and joyful. That's very rarely the experience. They are so exhausted, it's normally just pure relief. And then you turn around and you look back, and in the distance, you can see the cliffs in England and the castle at Dover, and you know that you swam across the English Channel. Ladies and gentlemen, what lessons can we learn from the world of swimming, which we can also take into the world of environmental campaigning? Well, I think the first lesson is that we must never, ever give up. I have never, ever undertaken an environmental campaign which didn't have a rocky start, which didn't have a difficult moment in the beginning. But if you mentally prepare for that, then hopefully you're able to get through it. And then you must get the momentum going. Momentum is absolutely key when you're trying to protect the environment. But you must also make sure that you have the energy and the determination to see things through all the way to the end. I remember in 2016, we were trying to protect an incredible area down in Antarctica called the Ross Sea. If you sail from the bottom of New Zealand and you sail from 40 degrees south to 50 to 60 to 70, in the distance, you will see something that looks like those cliffs in England, except it's not chalk, it's ice. It's the Ross Sea. It's an incredible area. And for 17 years, the New Zealand government and the American government, which had scientific stations down in the Ross Sea, had been trying to protect this. Big fishing fleets wanted to come in there and take the fish, and the American and the New Zealand governments were trying to get this area properly protected. And yet, they weren't able to get all the countries to agree this. They were able to get most of the countries, but still there was one country remaining which needed to be persuaded, and that was Russia. Well, you know, sometimes an idea is so crazy, it may just work. And so I decided to go down to Antarctica, go do a swim there, and then afterwards go to Russia and try and meet with the people, the decision makers around the president of Russia, to urge them to properly protect this area and to agree to this marine protected area. So I went down there, I did a swim. It was incredibly cold. The water minus 1.7 degrees centigrade. Afterwards, I went straight to Moscow, and there I was introduced to a Russian ice hockey player called Slava Fetisov. Now, Slava Fetisov had been the captain of the Soviet ice hockey team. He'd won 2 Olympic gold medals. He's a huge character, and he was a defender. I explained to him about the Ross Sea and why we must protect it. Do you know what he said to me? He said, "Lewis, I was a defender. The world needs more defenders and protectors." And so he took me to all the key decision makers around the president. And then the final meeting was going to be with the former head of the security services. And before we went into that meeting, myself and Slava made a decision. We said to each other, we are not going to give up. This place is too important. We must protect this place, whatever the cost. And we went in there, and we were able to persuade Russia to then finally agree to protect this area. They were the last country. And then finally, this precious, precious area was protected. It's 1.5 million square kilometers. It's the size of Britain, France, Germany, and Italy all put together. But the reason why I'm telling you this, the first thing which is so important in environmental campaigning is the decision to never give up. Thank you. What's the second lesson? Well, the second lesson is that environmental campaigning is a team sport. It's like swimming. It's a team sport. And the reason why I say that is because I have never, ever seen any place in the world that has been protected by one person or one organization. It's always a collective effort of many, many people. You need scientists, you need advocates, you need policymakers. You need government, you need business, you need philanthropies, you need charities, and you also need journalists and filmmakers and photographers. All of them come together. They all add a different aspect in order to get an area protected. And over the past few years, we seem to have made such good progress. I almost feel that we are right there, 400, 300 meters off the French coast. But what worries me is a sudden shock, that moment when you get stung by a jellyfish straight in the face. And we all saw what happened last year, when suddenly there was that major shock where funding was withdrawn. And what I noticed was that so many smaller charities, the grassroots ones, the ones who are doing the most important work on the ground and in the sea, they couldn't survive. And so tragically, one after the next went out. And so my message is to those organizations who sometimes come to these conferences and they take all the funding or a lot of the funding. What happens if you do that is that Your organization may survive, but our oceans won't survive. And so I urge you to come to this conference with a spirit of generosity and to help ensure that those grassroots organizations are properly funded so that we can protect this one precious ocean. What's my final message? My final message is about peace. At the moment, there is nothing more important in this world than protecting peace. You know, when we damage the environment, we create conditions which are ripe for conflict. People fight over limited resources. But when we protect the environment, when we work together, when we share resources equitably, then we protect the environment and we foster peace. Ladies and gentlemen, the work which you are doing coming here today and the work which you'll be doing this week discussing how to protect our oceans is important work, but it's also building peace. You are all peacemakers, and for that, I am incredibly grateful. Let me end off by just saying this, that every single generation has an opportunity to change the world, to make it safer, to make it more just, and to make it peaceful. And we must be that generation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very, very much. Thank you.